What's up guys, welcome back to Turbo LS Manual GU Ute that we're building. Obviously four-wheel drive seems to be the flavour of the month at the moment, so there's a fair few of them coming in, going out. Hopefully turn it over pretty quick, but yeah, we do love doing these things, so pretty exciting. So this episode, we'll obviously try and crack on with a bit more of this fab work, but we are sorting out wiring at the moment. Rex is sorting out wiring. Ideally, we try and send all of our conversion wiring straight down to the boys there at Whitey's Wiring. As you can see here, it's usually the way to go if you just want something done straight into it. You know it's not going to have any issues. It's freaking awesome. The problem that we have though, firstly, we're quite a long way from Whitey's Wiring. So actually getting four-wheel drives like this towed down and towed back and stuff, it does add quite a bit to the cost. Throws the budget out quite a bit for things like this. Not only that, but Whitey's Wiring also extremely busy little workshop. The wait line to get something like this done is quite extensive, and you know, we are capable of doing it ourselves. We've just usually tried to avoid it just because generally our time's better spent doing other things than letting people like Whitey's Wiring focus on the wiring side of things. So given the fact that we don't really have the time to wait or the budget to get this towed around and stuff like that, and the fact that it's just a manual LS1, we've decided just to do the wiring ourselves. We've ordered a lot of stuff through Whitey's obviously to get it done. Things like a fuse and relay box to run this thing standalone. So we'll sort of go through with you a little bit of the, I suppose, the do's and don'ts and things to be careful of when you're trying to wire up an LS conversion if you do want to take it on yourself. However, I do highly recommend just take it to someone like Whitey's or someone else that really knows their way around this stuff, because the last thing you want in a four-wheel drive is to have wiring gremlins. It is something that will plague your vehicle forever. You definitely want to get this right first time, that's for sure. All right, so on the LS1 Commodore looms, you do have, Rex has already cut them off, so I can't really show you, but up just in front, or behind I should say, of the driver's side coil tower, there's 3 plugs which connect, they integrate the engine loom to the rest of the body harness.
That's those 3.
That's those 3 there. So
3 of them in a row.
In this case, we've decided just to cut those off because we don't need the plugs particularly. But basically what you need to do is get hold of a pinout or a wiring diagram for whatever car your ECU came out of, figure out what those wires are, because that's how you're going to pretty much power the ECU and everything else and make it standalone, and you'll be able to see what you're not going to need out of that if you're not putting, you know, if obviously it's not a Commodore, there's a lot of wires there that you don't particularly need. But
so out of, I think the 25 or 26 wires is usually in those. That's all we need for this standalone, is those 8.
Yep.
Which is basically your battery power for ECU, ignition power for the ECU, then there's power for the driver and passenger side ignition and injectors.
Yep.
Another power for just overall engine sensors, then there's power in for the AC if you're keeping it, which we are, a fuel pump trigger and a fan trigger. That's pretty much it.
So the fuel pump trigger on the LS is actually a positive trigger. Most aftermarket ECUs run a low side trigger for a fuel pump, so that's something to keep in mind. Don't let that catch you up. But yeah, apart from that, once you separate those out of the loom, it is pretty simple in the way that you pretty much just have to feed this thing an ignition source, a constant battery power, and obviously through your fuse and relay box, which we'll show you when that arrives, which we bought from Whitey. We'll actually set up obviously our relays and fuses and stuff for injectors, coils, sensors, and everything else that we have to set up. So that's just a quick rundown.
That's pretty much all that stuff there. That's your BCM plug, all that stuff on the floor is just all of the crap I've taken out of the loom that we don't need, traction control shit, that sort of thing. The other thing I've done too is I've actually got our earthing and ignition powers that I'm going to run the e-boost off. I'm taking them off this harness as well, instead of having to muck around under the dash.
Under the dash, yep.
And I'm going to run the wires to the MAC valve from that as well. I'm also going to run with this main harness until it comes into the engine bay and then breaks from there, so that it's just one penetration through the
firewall,
through the firewall, and then
incorporate the e-boost with this.
Yeah, then the e-boost is running off the same as the engine stuff. So
yeah, are we trying to put this in the cab somewhere?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Inside.
Yeah, so
the other thing is the fuse box and relay box that we've ordered from Whitey's. We've made sure is one that actually seals. So obviously, being a four-wheel drive, you want it to be fairly weatherproof and dustproof and waterproof. So we tried to seal that up as much as we can.
Yes. So in these things, there's not a bad spot on the driver's side, just tucked up under the dash there, and then there's that hole in the firewall that I've taken the plug out of. That's an existing existing hole, so it's in the perfect spot.
Perfect spot.
So I've moved like the tacho output and the OBD wiring that normally goes through those plugs, I've moved to inside. So that's our OBD wiring is included in that.
Yep.
So the OBD plug will be down there as well. And then, so literally all that's outside is just what needs to run in the engine bay. From there, I've just got to do some rearranging of the O2 plugs because obviously being turboed, they're now up the front instead of being further down. So I'm just doing that. And then I'll be able to dummy it up in the engine bay and work out exactly where I want this to split. I have a feeling it might actually want to be back here further just to make it nice where it comes out of the through the firewall there.
Yep.
To match over to our new Fusebox, which is going to go up on that post in front of the clutch master there where the old fuel filter used to be for the TD. I'll just make a little bracket off there.
Yep.
It's not a bad spot for it. So
Awesome.
that's the plan.
So apart from that, you just use essentially the start trigger off the old loom that's in the Patrol. And like Rex was saying, the AC runs through this system, but we'll find the factory AC trigger that was in this loom as well and use that to trigger the relay to request the AC.
Yeah, I've already found it. So
yeah, Rex found
when I was mucking around the other day, removing all of the Patrol wiring, I've just got these few wires here that I've labelled. So that's the AC, the old AC, so that'll be our new trigger for the relay. That's the old start wire, and there's just a couple of others. That's the alternator sense wire.
Also need the water temp and oil pressure.
Yeah, they're already
there.
So that's the engine coolant temp. I just got to terminate that in a spade, and that's the oil pressure's already ready to go.
So those are the factory ones which run the GU dash, and we use adapters to put them in the LS so that everything on the cluster still works as factory.
So they're as per, like that little bit there, that's the wiring we haven't taken out. That's your gearbox.
Yep.
You know, reverse
Speed
lights and that sort of thing. So that's all as
That's the other thing,
factory.
we'll need an interface box to get the tacho working as well, which is something we'll need to take out of that loop.
Yeah, like I said, the tacho, I've already got.
Oh, you've already got it. Oh, cool.
I've moved the tacho output to here
Bloody perfect.
because I want to hook that up to the e-boost as well.
Oh, that's right.
So
yeah,
that we've got our corrections. And
yeah.
whatever
So
we do.
the e-boost, even in these things, on a budget, we run the e-boost Street 40. It's not a super expensive boost controller, and it's still very, very capable. So for these things, it's perfect. They actually have an RPM input into the e-boost, I think, as well as a vehicle speed.
No.
They don't have vehicle,
Just tacho.
so that must be the e-boost too.
Yeah.
That has VSS, yeah. So just tacho, but it's still enough that you can actually set up the tacho input to the e-boost so the e-boost knows what the engine RPM is doing, and then you can set your Mac valve duty cycle tables based off the RPM. So that's what we didn't do in the Cruiser, and that's what's sort of limiting that, is that, you know, it starts to run because the turbos are fairly small. You've got our desired boosts fairly early in the run, but as we get towards the end, it really starts to taper off. The boost starts to taper off, where if with this thing, because we'll have RPM input into the e-boost, we can jam some more duty cycle in those higher RPM areas and keep the boost curve completely flat, which is, you know, freaking awesome. It's pretty cool that you can do that. So when you're running like a stock LS1 PCM where you don't have the option for boost control, good old e-boost Street 40, perfect combo. So that's what we're going for this thing. But yeah, as you can see, the actual loom itself, not super complicated, especially once you strip out the stuff you don't need. You know, actually doing this part of the job is not that hard. The hardest part is the patience it takes to sit down and map it out and figure out what you need and don't, and going through it, everything, and basically deciding all of this stuff. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, I hope I got that right. 'Cause those wires aren't there anymore.
Well, it's not our first rodeo, so like we are perfectly capable of doing wiring. Rex did the entire wiring of the Land Cruiser. That was all done in-house. We've done other conversions and stuff before, or again, yellow shop ute and stuff. So that's why we decided to take these on instead of worrying about bothering Whiteys with this particular one. And we're pretty confident it's going to be awesome. So anyway, like I said, guys, as well as the wiring, we're going to try and crack on a bit more with this fab work. Like we talked about in the last episode with the Patrol Doctor Snorkel, we can pretty much just put the turbo wherever we desire. We're going to have to get rid of this overflow bottle, which doesn't bother us at all. We'll put a nice sort of slimline one in somewhere else, but this is pretty much going to be in the way of our intake from where our turbo is going to sit. But we want to try and get the turbo sort of positioned fairly soon, so that we can really map out our dump pipe, figure out what size oval pipe we can get hold of and what we're going to order for that to get that done. As well as, obviously, we still have to sort out our high mount, or basically our accessory drive setup. Obviously, because of where that manifold ended up and where it's run, we can't run the AC in the regular position. We've managed to keep the alternator in the factory position with these mounts. If you remember the last GU we converted, we did try this with the Marks mounts on their ZD chassis, and the alternator was just too close to the rail. It was just not going to work. But alternator can stay down there, which is awesome, because that keeps it nice and low for our turbo to be sort of up here. It's not going to be in the way. So yeah, we just need to sort of figure out how we're going to set up the AC, which side we're going to have it on, and get that sorted as well, and get that underway and get it ordered. So a few little things to sort out, and then obviously we'll have to sort out AC lines for that once we figure out where the position's going to be and get everything working. So anyway, outside of just sorting out, mapping out the loom and figuring out what you got to get and what you got to power, the other thing is just obviously to be very mindful of what you're powering and the amperage draw of that power. I've seen lots, as tuners we see it all the time, wiring done just so wrong, just incorrect. You look at, if we're going to run Commodore thermo fans, we're looking at quite a lot of amperage draw through those thermos. We try and have one thermo fan on each relay, just because of the current draw. So you just got to be mindful of where you're placing these relays, how long the wiring runs are, and what the current draw of everything you're trying to power is. So, but we will go through that when we get this fuse box for you. So the fuse box is going to be situated somewhere up here, really close to the battery. Always try and keep your fuses as close to your power source as you possibly can. There's no point in having your fuses at the end of a long run, because they're not going to work if there's an issue with the cable between the power source and the fuse. So that doesn't really work. So always try and keep it as close to the battery as you possibly can. All right, guys, so we're just rewrapping this loom up. Rex has incorporated his wires for the Mac valve for the e-boost, everything else that's needed. So pretty much all of the engine side stuff can now get rewrapped while we sort of wait for the fuse box to finish off the rest of it. Let's see what they run to there. All happy days. So the other thing that we do have to change with this loom as well is the injector plugs. So instead of the Bosch plugs like this, we'll be running the US car plugs because we'll be running Sonic 1000cc injectors in this thing. So we do have to change those over as well. Righto guys, cracking along with this thing again today, Rex is. We've got a power outage today, a scheduled power outage, which means we're very limited on what we can do. We have no power, but Rex has been working on getting the in-tank pump hanger sorted. Obviously, because this is a diesel, it just sucks through. There's no power through the bulkhead for a EFI pump. So we use these, I think they're Raceworks, these ones?
Yeah, these ones are.
Yeah, so we use these bulkhead connections, which are actually like a 25 amp rated M6 connection. You know, they're pretty awesome. We use them in a lot of cars when we're running high current draw pumps to upgrade the bulkhead for the current draw. You know, a lot of these 30, 40-year-old cars with factory aspirated engines don't have the means to facilitate, I should say, a really high current draw pump. Not that a 255 is a high current draw, but they insulate and they're a perfect solution for obviously when you don't have power through the bulkhead at all. So that's one thing we could do without power. So we need battery tools. So Rex is sorting that out as to do our fuel system as we discussed. I think we discussed it last episode, so I won't go through it again. So unfortunately, probably no more fabrication today with no power. That is just how it's gonna be. Not much we can do about it, except for wait for the power to come back on. So, all right. So Rex has also made his fuel pumps circuit. So this is 14 gauge, which is plenty enough to run both of these pumps for this sort of length of run. One for each pump. So what do we work out? The 250 should draw.
Oh,
the 255 will draw like
should nothing, because it's low pressure. It'll
yeah,
be like maybe 6-7 amps.
Yeah, I was about to say 6 amps or something. And then what the
340 should be
about 12.
About 12 or 13 at 4 bar.
Yeah, so 14 gauge, one for each is plenty. And that runs from where our relays are going to be right up here at the battery. And they just run down to the back to the fuel pumps through the cab on their own little run. But unfortunately, once again, at a stalemate with this until we get some power. The plan for once we get this place set up a lot better and get the shed finished off and have everything else happening is to have like a good gen set not only for days like this, because the power draw here is very, very average at best. And when it storms, the power always goes off, and there is, for some reason, heaps of scheduled power outages. So we'd have power for all those situations. Not only that, but we'd actually be able to have 3-phase, which would open us up heaps to what equipment we can get and how cheap the equipment is that we can get. So getting our intake manifold sorted. Got our 1000cc Sonic injectors in here. We've turned the fuel rail around so that the fuel feeds on this side, which is away from all the turbo stuff that's going to be on that side of the engine bay. So it's going to be the fuel feed in. We've reused the injector clips. We always try and reuse these wherever we can. So they help quite a lot in actually just getting the injector to sit down in the seat on the manifold better. We have had issues before with cars with rails that are just a little bit bent without these clips on them, and the injectors can actually push up enough or down enough actually to start spurting fuel out, which is obviously very, very scary. The last thing we want is a fuel fire because of that. So always try and reuse these clips wherever we can, because they are really good. They do help a lot. In this one as well, we have also put brand new seals. New seals is sort of for us is an as required basis. We don't put them in all manifolds. Not all of them need it, but because this is a Gen 3, it's a fairly old engine. Those seals were not too good when we pulled this manifold off, and obviously being boosted as well, you really want those seals to be nice and fresh in a boosted application. So fresh seals for this particular one. We do find the Gen 4 manifolds with the green seals, they're usually a lot better. We don't usually have to replace those, but just trying to do as much as we can without power, obviously. Also got our new Raceworks 2-bar map sensor, which is straight plug-in for Gen 3 as well. So 2-bar map sensor ready to go. Again, with your sensors, guys, always buy genuine. Always buy from a reputable dealer. If you have any issues, shoot me a message. Always be careful about where you buy injectors and sensors. Don't ever cheap out on those two things. It'll hurt you in the end. So we just got power back for 3:10, so we can do a few of the things we've been waiting to do. We're trying to crack along with this sort of as best we can. The problem we have is that Patrol Doctor on the website, it's very hard to sort of judge this airbox and where it actually finishes, because in the photo it seems that they've moved like this overflow and everything. So in the photo that they've got on the website, there's not a lot for reference, which is making it pretty difficult. And the last thing we want to do is build all this and have it all done and have the airbox get here and find out the airbox comes to like here and it's going to be in the way or something like that. So yeah, we're sort of trying to figure out what to do, whether it's worth the risk of getting ahead or whether we just wait for this airbox to get here and just do it right. So
bit of weld prep. Look at that. What a merge.
Continuing on with the big girl, Rex got our merge made yesterday. So that's the merge up into the turbo flange. You can see there's just a little bit of a gap to that passenger side manifold. It has to be sort of just completed and filled up. Ooh, freaking ladder there. And as you can see, obviously, this is our passenger side manifold. As you can see, it's built obviously to try and give us as much room for a dump pipe as we possibly can. But as it is, we are going to be going to 3.5-inch oval for the dump to fit more in there. And obviously, being that we've done quite a few of these now, always built with in mind, obviously, serviceability. So you can get at all of the plug leads, you can get at all of the plugs. Always built very carefully so that these things are nice and easy to work on and try and keep heat away from things as much as possible. So that just needs to be filled, and that's pretty much this manifold up into the flange sorted. And we're just waiting for our oval pipe to get here. So we're gonna leave that gap there for now, and that's just gonna stay like that until we get our snorkel and airbox from Patrol Doctor, and we can see whether we can actually afford to maybe move this whole setup back that 10 mil, just to join that straight together. If we can afford to do that with the airbox and everything in situ and it's all gonna work, that's what we'll do. But we'll wait for it to get here in case we actually have to leave that there and just fill it. So what we're gonna do is come out of the turbo, transition. The actual outlet for the turbo is only 3-inch, so it's going to transition from 3 to 3.5. Going to be just a slight little bit of 3.5 and a bend. Then we're going to transition into 3.5 oval. So we're going to go 3.5 oval down the dump. Should be nice to get in there. Should be plenty of room. And then after the oval, we'll transition it into 4-inch after that, and then continue on with the rest of our 4-inch exhaust. It means we only need that bit of 3.5-inch oval. We've got enough 3.5-inch straight just to do obviously this, this little area, and we only need sort of one, maybe two bends in 3.5, which we can get hold of. But obviously, I think I explained it at the start of this exhaust has no need to be 4-inch. There's no reason that this thing needs a 4-inch exhaust. 3.5 would be plenty. It's just how hard it is to get stuff in 3.5 at the moment is just ridiculous. We've got ourselves some 4-inch mufflers and cats ready to go, which we just couldn't get in 3.5. So anyway, that's that. When I bought some of this stuff from Ben Brothers the other day, I actually got two 4-inch aluminium half donuts, and they're gonna work perfect for just coming straight out of this turbo and just doing basically a direct U-turn, and then we'll route that up to where the airbox is gonna be up here. So that's gonna work freaking awesome. And yeah, it's all coming together. This thing's just gonna be such a good rig. I talked to the owner about just putting one of those Defi all-in-one gauge things in this thing, like we run in the Cruiser. The unfortunate thing with these, obviously, because we're running Gen 3 PCMs or LS1 ECUs, they're great in that you have real time and they're really, really tunable. They're really nice to tune. They're a lot nicer to the tune than the newer Gen 4 ones. But they're still all serial communication. There is no CAN communication, and therefore none of these aftermarket electronic CAN dashes that are on the market actually work with them properly. So a simple solution is what we run in the Cruiser is one of those all-in-one Defi gauges. It's still nice and discreet and little. You don't need a million gauges. It doesn't take up much room. You can set alarms and it displays everything you need to display. So he's pretty keen to just run one of those in this thing. So running from that, we are prepping the engine for quite a few more sensors. It's really nice, obviously, being able to see fuel pressure and everything else in the cab. If something's happening with the car, if it's not behaving, if it starts, playing up, you can sort of have a look and see what's going on. So a little bit of a change to the fuel system as well, because the Walbro 255 pump that we plan to run on the in tank to pump through the surge, the pump is too tall for us to pretty much cut this back and sit it here and tie it to that like we were going to and have it be all good. It's going to come up too far to where this level gauge float is welded to this tube. So without having to cut this off and modify it and come up with something else, that wasn't going to work. So what we've actually decided to do is change the setup a little bit. We're going to leave the big one here in situ. It's now going to be the return line, and we'll be able to actually tie the pump to that, which is obviously, for one, a lot stronger. Not that we're that worried about this pump anyway, but we'll be able to use that to tie the pump basically between these two tubes. And then what we're going to do is actually get a AN bulkhead fitting and put that in that bulkhead in the top between obviously these two powers, or these two bulkhead electrical terminals. So there'll be a bulkhead AN fitting, which is actually going to now be our feed. So our feed's going to be all new from this pump all the way to the surge. This is going to be the return, and we'll just cap this at the top and blanket, and it won't be used except for some structural to tie the pump to on the in-tank. So that's changed a little bit. That way we don't have to modify the float for the level, and that can all just stay and work as it should from factory. So that's changed a little bit, and Rex has just been working on a frame to house our surge tank, which is all going to bolt up underneath the tray there. So that's what Rex has been working on this morning. So it's all coming along. Again, we've learned a lot over the years of tuning turbo LS 4 drives, building them ourselves, and we're just trying to implement all of the things we've learnt. Basically the plan is for this thing to just go together, tune, and after that should just work and should hopefully never have any issues that aren't just obviously regular maintenance sort of deal. But this is the frame that Rex has made. So this is the surge. Our Raceworks 340 LPH pump houses in there. We've got a feed from the tank, a return back to the tank, and a return from the filter reg, which will actually be mounted on the side of this as well. So super simple fuel system that's going to work freaking awesome.
No worries. You never have to worry about bloody surge like we get in the Cruiser.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to work awesome. It's going to be really easy to access everything and service everything. It's going to have huge big electrical terminals on everything, so there's going to be no electrical issues. There's going to be no surging issues.
It's all new wiring too, so there's not relying on any patrol wiring at all.
Yep, it's going to be awesome. And it's going to have a fuel pressure sensor with a gauge on the dash so that he can see. So, really, really nice. The best you can do with like a stock ECU. Righto, so that's our Raceworks 340 in the hanger for the surge tank.
I really like these this setup. Nice little surge tank, in-tank pump, nice and quiet.
Yeah, it keeps it nice and quiet.
Very simple. Like they're relatively compact too, like easy to fit. I'm a fan. I do like them. I like this setup. Bloop.
Bloop.
Bloop. Just like that. Ready to rock and roll.
Alright, that's it on its little frame.
And then the lines will come around the filter rag there with a little, I was just going to put a P-clamp around it just to hold it in place. Put a little screw through there. It'll be very nice, I think.
Ooh.
I'm proud of it. I like it.
Alright, what's up guys? I am sick as.
Shit.
Yeah, I woke up yesterday morning and life was like, you need to start sounding and feeling how you look. So here we are. So I'm not actually working today. I just came in, Rex did some work yesterday, and I just wanted to film some of the progress before it continues on any further today. So I'm going to film this quick segment, and then I'm going to bounce, go home and edit some videos and work from home, which is great. So, as you can see, getting moving on the crossover. Obviously there's still a flex joint to go in, plus our other V-band, so that's very easy to remove, and it flexes independently with heat and stuff. The flex joints we get from Ben Brothers. I'm actually wearing his shirt today, which is great, but you can't see it because it's cold and I'm sick, so I'm wearing a jumper. But these flex bolos, we see all the time people bring in, particularly for things like crossovers like this, using the stainless braided flex bellows. They're no good. Those stainless braided ones, we don't even use them for dump pipes anymore where we can avoid it, because they do just implode and they collapse and they cause a restriction, and in a crossover pipe they're really bad. But these full flow steel flex bellows, these flex bellows are freaking awesome. We've never had any issues with these leaking or any issues with them collapsing or doing anything they shouldn't so far. Most of the stuff that we get from that's stainless comes from Ben Brothers. Even a lot of Ali stuff we get from Ben Brothers when he's got stock. We've been super happy with the material that we get from him. It's freaking awesome. All of these V-band clamp kits that we get from him weld so nice. They're such nice clamps. They're quick release and everything. So huge thanks to Ben Brothers for that. Unfortunately, he doesn't supply any steam pipe, so we don't get the steam pipe from him. But anyway, I just thought I'd show you that because that's probably going to go in this crossover pipe. So Rex also removed all of the power steering lines out of this thing yesterday as well. Got all them out ready to go. And basically, where this manifold is at the moment is about as far as we can sort of get until we get the actual snorkel and airbox kit when it arrives, and confirm the turbo placement. Look at that, another engine to build that just got dropped off to add to our ever-growing shed full of crap. We'll come into where magic happens, where Rex also got a fair bit done yesterday. This is the main thing I wanted to film today before Rex continues buttoning things up on this engine. So we've got Bryce's LS1 here, stock bottom end, as you saw, just stripped and cleaned up. Rex has already fitted our Mark's windage tray and pickup with our pickup brace. We've got here a brand new GM LSA pump. So the LSA pumps are a high flow pump from GM. Flow a lot more oil than the standard ones. We don't ever put these pumps on like high RPM NA engines for drift cars and stuff. We don't like using these sumps because all you're going to do at that sort of RPM continuously is pump all the oil out of the sump faster, which is also a problem with LSs, is starving for oil. But in this application where you're feeding a turbo, always awesome to have that extra bit of flow. Not only that, but the Mark's conversion sump, the way they're shaped, very little issues with any sort of oil surge and draining the sump. So quite a good design for that. So that's a perfect use for these things in that application. So if ever we're feeding a turbo or like a really big external oil cooler in just like an auto street car or something, we will go to the LSA pump. It's only in those high RPM applications where their engines are aspirated where we don't really worry about it. So as well as that, you can see we've got our new timing kit. Just gone a single row on this one just to save some issues. It's also not particularly necessary to go dual row, it just isn't. So the cam that we put in this thing, what cam did we end up going with this thing actually? We chose the Crow cams. It's an off-the-shelf grind. It is the 1270, which is a 223, 228. Oh yeah, 114. That's a nice little cam. Yeah, 580, 588. so not too harsh on the drive, on the valve train. Nice and wide load. With this small turbo, should get this thing happening. Should be really happy. So that's the can that went in this thing. We got Rex put the new lifters and new lifter buckets in it, LS1 lifters. We've got our new GM upgraded rear main plate. These are a lot stronger than the standard LS1 ones. We pretty much put those on every LS. So sorry for you guys that have been watching the channel for a long time. I'm pretty much just rinsing and repeating a lot of this stuff that you've heard already, but for anyone new here, I sort of just like to go through all of the precautions we take and things that we do. There will also be a new billet oil barbell in this thing, which I won't be able to show you because the rear cover's on. But yeah, all these engines get a new billet oil barbell. So yeah, basically this is just a little bit of insurance. Billet oil barbell's a little bit of insurance. High volume oil pump is just to keep the turbo fed and nice and happy and keep it cool. Upgraded rear main plate is again insurance. Yeah, basically all just little things that in the long run will add up to build a nice reliable touring rig. So that's the idea. So at this stage now Rex can get the front cover and the sump on and stuff. But we are still waiting for our heads. I was meant to go get them today and swap over a heap of other stuff for the machine shop down to Leith there at Kingito. So a huge shout out to Leith for doing that sort of machine work for us. But obviously I'm not going to take this sickness over to share that with him today. So his heads are just going to have to wait until later on in the week. But that's all right. That's not a big deal. So anyway guys, just in case I am sick and I miss it and I'm not here, his heads will go back from the machine shop with new intake valves, seeing as they were all bent. So we got a fresh set of intake valves. They've all been ground and serviced with the seats. That's all happy days. And we got Leith just to skim 10th thou off the face. That's just to square it up. Don't want to put too much compression in this thing, seeing as it's going in a 4-wheel drive, and it's going to be turbo as well. So it doesn't need big compression. So then we will have new set of head dowels go in. A set of ARP head bolts. We're a big fan of the head bolts in this application, particularly in like a Gen 3 LS1. You are more likely to bend a Gen 3 rod before you go lifting a head with ARP head bolts, and the difference in price between bolts and studs is nearly double. There's no point in putting head studs in a motor that with enough boost you'll bend a rod before you lift a head with a bolt. So ARP head bolts, generally anything that we are only aiming for about 500 horsepower, head bolts all day. Happy day. So we've got dual valve springs to go in the heads, which are here. Because the valves, we've got new valve stem seals and spring seats obviously as well. Also because the valves, it might be alright with the brand new intake valves, but because the valves have been ground and the valve seats have been ground as well to reface the valves and seats, what that does is actually allows the valve to sit up higher into the head, which obviously changes your installed height on the spring. So all the installed heights are checked, and the springs or the seats are shimmed as required to get the correct installed height for the spring. And that's pretty much, then the heads go on with those new gaskets, ARP head bolts. It's all happy days. So then after that, you saw we've got his manifold ready with his injectors, his new seals, and his new map sensor, his new Raceworks genuine 2-bar map sensor, which was purchased from barrowtheworld.com. So huge thank you to barrowtheworld.com for that. They also supplied the eBoost Street 40 that's going in this thing, which we'll show you as we install that. We've got some pretty cool ideas for that thing. They also supplied us the Turbo Smart Gen 5 50mm wastegate that's going on this thing as well. So huge thanks to barrowtheworld.com for that. Head to their store and have a look. It's not all just Barrow stuff, as you can see. We're putting some stuff in an LS, much to a lot of people's dismay. But yeah, big thanks to Barrow the World for helping us out with those. So head over to their shop and take a look and do some shopping and get yourself something nice. So another thing that we've been talking about that we're going to order is how we're going to do the breather setup. Obviously we're going to put a AN breather on each cover. It's pretty much a need to for all turbo LSs. They really need to breathe. It's what we actually changed on the Cruiser when we redid the manifolds earlier this year, for those of you who watched. The difference is on the Cruiser we plumbed them directly into the intakes. We didn't use any sort of catch can, and we have noticed that it is consuming a fair bit of oil through them turbos. So we are going to change that setup, very similar to how we're going to do this one this time. But this time, on this one, we should be able to get it right first time, and we're going to be using a pair of these. So this is just an Aeroflow Air Oil Separator. So it's basically just a really well baffled catch can that actually separates air and oil. It's got a little dipstick in it. It's obviously an AN10 in and out, and it's also got a little fitting on the bottom which can be used for a drain. Now they do sell these in basically a 2-pack. in a line on the same bracket, which is what we're going to be using for this. This is actually the one for crust eater. I just knew that it was around here somewhere, so I just grabbed it out for a reference of the actual size of them. So that's going to be great. So we're going to be able to run these on the firewall, no worries. Obviously around next to, maybe next to where we mount the coils or something, but we should be able to sit a pair of them up on the firewall here, no worries somewhere. Basically run one cover to each one. And then from each one, obviously, we'll probably run to the intake pipe between the snorkel and the turbo. Just looking at the way the airbox is set up, I'm pretty sure that the airbox being round, it'll probably have a pod filter on the end of the intake pipe. So I don't think plumbing them to the actual airbox anywhere will give us any sort of filtered air, which obviously very important for these. You don't want your engine to be breathing back in air that's unfiltered. So always make sure they're breathing to filtered air area, so you're not sucking in contaminants into your engine. So they're going to be a good size and they're going to work great. So we'll order a pair of those as well, and that should be no issues with any sort of oil consumption. Should be great. So that should be more than happy days. Anyway guys, on that night I'm going to go home, do some video editing and invoicing and stuff from home that I can do, and hopefully feel better tomorrow so I can come back and finish some of this stuff off so it doesn't keep piling up to our ears. All right guys, back again this morning. Still feel like ass, but at least I'm back at work today. But shortly after I left yesterday, this showed up. Yeehaw. So this is our Patrol Doctor 4-inch bonnet entry snorkel and airbox kit. And gotta say, super mega impressed with this thing, particularly for the money. Pretty amazing what this is for the price. Where the airbox sits is pretty much absolutely bloody perfect. Rex spent a lot of time yesterday, once the airbox got here, basically moving, repositioning the turbo, you know, trying heaps of different methods in the spirit of trying to make sure that with the turbo in place, you could still pull the whole filter element out of the casing without having to remove the whole snorkel, as well as be able to get the intake pipe to the turbo on and off without having to remove anything. So sounds simple enough, but it actually takes a lot of time to try and find the right position for the turbo where everything is accessible and removable. Just a lot of time and forethought going into that sort of thing, so that this thing is obviously still nice to work on and serviceable and easy to do whatever you need to do. So that was most of Rex's day, just getting that right. After that, he finished welding up the passenger side manifold. But yeah, this thing is freaking awesome and would be absolutely no restriction to this sort of power. It'd be just capable of bulk power. This thing's sick. So super impressed. And I mean, we didn't even get any discounts or anything. To get a trade discount for Patrol Doctor, you have to buy at least 5 snorkels. So even at retail, which is what we paid for this thing, I'm still super impressed by it. Really cool. So anyway, that's wicked. It's gonna work freaking awesome. Bryce has just got to find himself a new passenger side guard. I noticed this one's got some questionable parts on it anyway. So apparently after us, this thing's going to paint. So basically he's doing like a full rebirth of the car, pretty much. Like it comes to us, it's getting all this conversion work done, and then it's going to paint and panel, and it's going to be really, really nice. Which is, it's awesome, because the fact is, something like a GU Patrol, what's on the market today that you can replace it with that's equivalent, you know? So that's why these things, I think, are always going to be worth a little bit. Maybe not heaps, but they're always going to be worth having, and I can't wait to get one of my own one day, but I'll bide my time. So as well as that, Rex started sorting out this little fuel surge tank. Got our little filter reg on the side, which is a little bracket that he made for it that P-clamps on there, which is awesome. So these are, it's the same filter reg we used for the last year we converted. What are they, WCF 151?
Yes. Yeah.
So this is the part number. So this is a 4-bar.
Ryco equivalence is Z768.
Yeah, Z768. So for all you playing at home, if you want to do like a deadhead setup and you want a filter reg that is going to cost you like 30 bucks, you can get it, not even that much.
100 bucks.
Oh, 100 bucks. Oh, sorry guys, just lied to your face. So 100 bucks, but basically these, I think they used them on a lot of VAG cars. The old VAG. VAG cars, like a lot of Volkswagens and Audis and stuff use this part. So you can pretty much buy these at any Repco, like basically you can walk in any one of those parts stores and get hold of one of those filter rigs. So they're very accessible, they're very simple. They're just EFI fittings, which we obviously stock conversion fittings to AM. Yeah, so easily accessible. These will regulate end filter at 4 bar, which is exactly what we want. And yeah, that just runs the deadhead back to the stock line, which you saw Rex welded his AN6 onto it, and then it's happy days back up to the front from there, and it's deadhead, and it's all wicked. Happy days. So then we just got a feed from the main tank and then a return to the main tank. So yeah, we're a big fan of these filter eggs just for keeping things simple. Yeah, they're really, really cool. Got our heads back now as well. So happy days, brand new intake valves. And here we've got our passenger side manifold all welded up, all the way up into our T4 flange. So I'm really stoked with these T4 flanges. I'm not sure if I showed you in this build series, but I found these actual CNC machined T4 flanges. And you can see how, instead of just being a square hole on the backside, they're actually CNC'd into a 3-inch inlet, which is awesome. It means you don't have any gaps to fill with pipe. Pipe goes straight on, you can weld around it, and it also means there's no hot spots right on the corners. So, super, super stoked to find them flanges. They weren't cheap, but once again, in the interest of making manifolds that are bulletproof, not going to crack, freaking wicked. So anyway, that's the flange with the right orientation for the turbo for everything to work. We've just got to feed in our crossover, which is probably today's plan. And that's the manifold side of things sorted out. Oh, and obviously we've got to sort out the wastegate. Righto guys, cracking along. Rex is working on this crossover. We borrowed another engine just to be able to dummy everything up and get it together. But yeah, so that's coming along there. Also, all of the stuff has just arrived for the Fusebox and relay box. I bought two so that I could do this conversion as well, which will also be happening if you care to watch that on the channel too. But these are pretty cool. These are the same brand as the ones I put in the R33.4 outside there, but these ones are obviously quite a bit bigger. I reckon they mount a bit better as well. But yeah, these things with the connections and seals and stuff should be pretty well completely sealed. If you guys watched the shop ute as well as the Land Cruiser, we did really like using the Busman boxes. We found them to be a really good design as far as just being really well sealed and good for applications like a four-wheel drive. Unfortunately, it's very, very hard to find stock of them. We had a huge problem trying to find stock. It seems to be a lot of people carry or stock the bust versions, which we can't use in this application because there's too many things that are low side triggered versus high side triggered. You couldn't run everything off the same fuse box if it was bust. So really, really annoying, but these seem to be really well sealed as well. They're a little bit cheaper, and bought plenty of fuses and stuff and realized ready to go. So that's what I'll be using. Pretty excited to get that sorted out. And it turns out you can actually gang them together. Obviously it doesn't matter to us because we're not putting them together, but you can, so that's cool. Righto guys, so that is the turbo in its position that Rex spent ages getting it into yesterday to work around all this stuff. And that's with the manifold completely all welded up. So the crossover's all been welded up. We just still have to add the flex joint in, which is going to be the last thing that we'll do to the crossover, but it is all welded. And they're looking bloody great. I just ordered a new aftermarket replacement set of AU thermos to use for this thing. Because we were supplied the engine, not a complete donor sort of deal, we don't actually have thermofans to go in it. And after looking around and testing a few that we've got here and stuff like that, I've decided that I think that AU thermos, once again, are just going to be the best option to go as far as just the most CFM and the easiest to fit and the easiest to try and seal up around where the shroud is going to be. So we run them on our cruiser, turboed LS. We tow often with it, and they go awesome on that. So I don't see any reason why they won't go awesome on this. I just really, really hope that the aftermarket replacement ones are just as good as the OEM ones and draw just as much air. So anyway, with that sorted out, it's now time to get our gate placement and everything happening and see what we can do as far as getting the rest of it sorted. I just spoke to Ryan at Elite Fab Works. He has managed to source us some 3.5-inch oval, so we are going to stick to that plan. So we had originally planned obviously to put the gate where you just saw it up off the start of the volute, just off the housing sort of up here, but we're starting to think maybe putting it off the merge down there is a better option. With a little bit of clearancing of this guard, we can sort of keep it down low there. and keep that pipe underneath and have it join up into the dump pipe, and leaves all this area free, which makes it a lot easier to get at plug leads and plugs and things like that. So this may be a better option.
Ooh, nah.
Yeehaw.
No way.
So with sort of finalising the positioning for all of our turbo equipment and everything engine-wise, it was sort of time to start figuring out what we can do as far as high mounting the AC pump so that we can get some AC back in this thing, because I tell you what, having a daily drive car in Australia with no AC, it sucks. It's not much fun, so it's got to happen. So we never ordered obviously any sort of high mount stuff when we originally purchased all the conversion gear, because at that time we didn't sort of know where we were going to be routing everything and what sort of room we were going to work with. So we have ended up in a little bit of a painful position. So a high mount kit like this one from Marks would be absolutely ideal for our situation. This would fit perfectly in there for what we're doing. It wouldn't contact anything. This would fit perfectly. Everything would be awesome. The only problem is that Marks don't actually make this kit for Gen 3 offset. They only make this kit for the Gen 4 offset, which is obviously a problem, because this one being LS1, we've got all the Gen 3 accessories offset. So I was having a look. You can buy ones from Castle Main Rod Shop, and there's heaps of other companies that make all sorts of different high mount AC kits, but all of them retain the factory filler point in this cover on this side, which is obviously you can't do with this one because of how high it is. So with that retained, all of the other kits, instead of being up nice and high, almost directly above the rocker cover like this one is, they're all holstered off to the side quite a bit, and they all come out quite far off the side of the head. And that is not going to work in our situation because there is a battery tray directly in the way, if you have a look here. So looking at the room we've got to work with, we've got steering shaft, battery tray, all, you know, a hand span away from that that tensioner there. So not a lot of room for us to work with. We sort of need something high mount up here. We're counting on trying to find something that we can put up high rather than off to the side, because it's not going to work. So after looking around for ages, I think I may have found one that's going to work. Just from some quick initial measurements, it looks like it's going to work. It looks like it's going to have to come from the States, from Malex Motorsport, but it does look like it's going to work. But it uses like a Sandon 7176 mini compressor, but it is like as high and up as I can find a kit that's going to work. And just going off the measurements that they give here for the center line of how far out it is, I think that this should get us out of trouble. So bit of a gamble, but it's about the only one I can find that is even going to remotely maybe work. So I think we're just going to have to bite the bullet and go for it, and fingers crossed that works out for us. So bit of a pain, but hey, what do you do? So you can see from that pump actually comes flush with the cam cover there. I don't know if that looks like a tall cover compared to a stock one, but obviously the pump doesn't come that far back. It is like a mini compressor, so I really hope that it's a big enough compressor to actually effectively work for a system, an AC system this size.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, well, like I said, there's only one way to find out, and at this stage it's pretty much the only kit that I can find that's even maybe going to work. I wonder if there's enough demand to put a kit like this out. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know why Marks wouldn't do one for each offset, but I don't know. I could call them and have a chat with them. Obviously there's not a lot of demand for it though. So we're just actually checking what the differences are between Gen 3 and Gen 4 as far as the water pump goes to the head. Basically our thoughts are, if we can get this piece of this kit from Marks, can we just space it forward to suit a Gen 3 offset?
You can.
It'll work.
Because the mounting point for the tensioner is the same distance off the head, so it's 60 mil either way. So all you got to do is space
everything. That's to space everything.
You have to space everything and use a Gen 4 tensioner. Because this is different here.
Yeah.
Because that's offset on your Gen 3, that's the extra however many mil.
Yeah, so.
But you can space there where this tensioner actually bolts to the water pump and then space everything out, and that should push everything forward however many mil we need. There's no I can't see any reason that wouldn't work.
Alright. Oh,
We can make that fit.
we'll get on the marks and see if they'll sell just... Because having a look at the website, it looks like they only sell the kit as a pair.
Alternator end.
Alternator end AC,
AC.
but we only need this side.
Yeah.
So,
But other than that, everything's the same. I don't see any reason at all why we couldn't just do that.
just space it out.
Yeah, we'll just work out the difference, have some spaces made up the right distance and go for it.
Alright. We'll do that then. Does that mean... Probably means all of our hardware, all the hardware that comes with this isn't going to work.
No, we'll have to get
All new hardware.
the same
and stuff.
set, yeah.
Yep.
But bolts, that's not that expensive. They're not hard to get either.
Yep. Alright. So it's already too late to talk to them today, but I'll give Marks a call tomorrow about that, and fingers crossed, because that's definitely going to be the best way to go about it. So Rex has got this flex bellow all tacked in, so pull it out and weld that up flush, and then that's our manifold sorted. Unfortunately, this one is going to be too long to fit in our new oven to bake the ceramic paint properly, which is a bit of a pain. It's a shame, but God, you'd need a big oven to be able to do it all. I don't know what to do about it. All right, so we had a bit of an epiphany. Rex had an epiphany over at the fab bench before. We can't put the gate on the bottom side of the flange facing the airbox, because then we won't be able to get the airbox or the air filter out of the airbox. So we just nearly undid Rex's whole day of work yesterday.
Yeah, all that would have been a waste of time.
Yeah, very swiftly. So anyway, Rex figured that out. But yeah, basically it just means back to plan A of putting the gate off the start of the volute on the turbo, which is fine. That's how we planned to do it originally. And we might even just make a new reservoir up on the firewall and just run it into the front or down here. I don't know, we'll find somewhere to put it. It won't be a problem. Yeehaw, crossover done. So we put the driver's side bank O2 sensor in the crossover, and then the passenger side bank we put in the dump. That's how we set up the LSs when we turbo them. Fine to do with narrowband sensors. Obviously you can't do that with wideband sensors because it really affects how they read if they're in something that's pressurized. So narrowband sensors don't really care though, they're fine. And it's pretty much the best way to do it. Looking the good. Anyway guys, I think that can pretty much do it for another episode for this thing. Try not to drag this out too long. Sorry that we didn't get to get the whole picture of the wiring in the one episode like I did say we would try to, but obviously we only just received this today, so we'll cover that a bit more in the next episode, the actual fuse box wiring in of the actual loom, now that we've sort of got it sorted out. Obviously plus the finishing off the fab work, fingers crossed, hopefully. Hopefully we'll get to finish it off next episode. But anyway, thanks for watching as always guys. Hope to see you on the next one. Peace out, see you, bye.